Imagine a town, not too big, not too small, where everyone knew everyone. In this town lived a man named Ben. He wasn't famous or rich, just a regular guy. He worked at the local factory making parts for cars. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it paid the bills, and Ben was a hard worker. He always showed up on time and did his best. Ben was more than just a factory worker. He had a good heart. He always tried to do the right thing even when it was hard. If someone needed help, Ben was always there to lend a hand. He believed in being kind and helpful to others. He lived in a small house with his wife, Sarah, and their little dog, Lucky. They didn't have much, but they were happy. They enjoyed spending time together, going for walks in the park, and watching movies on TV. Ben always made sure his family was taken care of. He was a good husband and a loving owner. He always thought of others. One sunny afternoon, Ben was at work. The factory was noisy, with machines humming and clanging. Ben was focused on his job, carefully assembling car parts. He knew his work was important, even if it wasn't exciting. Suddenly, a loud screech echoed through the factory. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked around, confused. An announcement came over the loudspeaker. "Attention all personnel. There has been an incident outside the factory gates. Please remain calm." Ben felt a knot of worry in his stomach. He hoped everyone was okay. He couldn't shake the feeling that something bad had happened. He tried to get back to work, but he was too distracted. He kept thinking about what could have caused the screech. He peeked out the window, trying to see what was happening outside. He saw a crowd of people gathered near the road. He couldn't make out what they were looking at, but he knew it couldn't be good. The feeling of worry grew stronger. He had to know what was going on. Ignoring the announcement, Ben couldn't stand the suspense any longer. He told his supervisor he needed to use the restroom, but instead, he hurried towards the factory gates. As he got closer, he could see the crowd more clearly. He pushed his way through, his heart pounding in his chest. That's when he saw it. A little girl, no older than 6, had chased a bright red ball into the street. A car was speeding towards her, the driver seemingly unaware of the danger. The girl was frozen, her eyes wide with fear. Time seemed to slow down. Ben didn't think, he just reacted. He knew he had to do something, anything, to save her. He couldn't let anything happen to that little girl. He pushed through the remaining people, his mind racing. He knew he had to act fast. There was no time to hesitate. Every second counted. The car was getting closer and closer. He had to be quick. With a burst of adrenaline, Ben sprinted towards the little girl. He didn't even register the fear that must have been present. His only thought was to get her out of harm's way. The car was getting closer, its horn blaring loudly. Ben reached the girl just as the car was about to hit her. He lunged forward, pushing her with all his might. He managed to shove her out of the path of the car, but he wasn't fast enough to avoid it completely himself. The car grazed his side, sending him sprawling onto the ground. He felt a sharp pain in his arm and a dull ache in his head. But he didn't care. He immediately looked up to see if the little girl was okay. She was lying on the sidewalk, crying, but otherwise unharmed. The red ball bounced harmlessly nearby. Ben breathed a sigh of relief. He had saved her. He had done what anyone with a good heart would have done. The pain was worth it. He was just happy she was safe. A crowd quickly gathered around Ben and the little girl. People were shouting, praising Ben for his bravery. "He's a hero," someone yelled. Others were checking on the little girl, making sure she was all right. The driver of the car, pale and shaken, rushed over to apologize. Ben felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. His arm throbbed, and his head was pounding. He tried to stand up, but his legs felt weak. Several people helped him to his feet, patting him on the back and thanking him for his quick thinking. Amidst the commotion, Ben remembered his job. He was already late for his shift, and he had left his workstation without permission. He knew he was in trouble, but he couldn't regret his actions. He would do it again in a heartbeat. Saving that little girl was more important than any job. Still, he knew his boss wouldn't see it that way. He braced himself for the consequences. The cheers of the crowd began to fade as reality set in. Ben limped back to the factory, his arm throbbing with every step. He knew what was coming. He walked straight to his supervisor's office, bracing himself for the worst. His supervisor, Mr. Henderson, was a stern man with a reputation for following the rules. He didn't look up as Ben entered the office. "Henderson," Ben said quietly. Mr. Henderson finally looked up, his face grim. "Ben, have a seat." He sighed heavily. "I've heard about what happened. While I commend your bravery, I have no choice but to terminate your employment, effective immediately." Ben was stunned. "But I saved a little girl's life," he protested. "I understand," Mr. Henderson said, his voice cold. "But you violated company policy. You left your workstation without permission, and you were absent from your shift. We have safety protocols to uphold." "I'm sorry, Ben. There's nothing I can do." He handed Ben a pink slip and a final paycheck. Ben stared at the pink slip, his heart sinking. He had lost his job, all because he had done the right thing. The following weeks were tough for Ben and his family. The small savings they had quickly dwindled. Ben spent every day searching for a new job, but no one was hiring. His arm, still healing, made it difficult to perform manual labor. He applied for countless positions, from construction worker to delivery driver, but he was always turned down. The bills piled up, and Sarah had to take on extra shifts at the local diner to make ends meet. They started cutting back on everything, selling some of their belongings to pay the rent. Ben felt like a failure. He had always been the provider, the one who took care of his family. Now he couldn't even put food on the table. He felt forgotten by the town he had saved a child in. The initial praise and attention had faded, and he was left to face his struggles alone. He wondered if he had made the right choice, even though he knew in his heart that he had. Despair started to creep in. He was losing hope. One evening, after another fruitless day of job hunting, Ben was walking home, his shoulders slumped with defeat. The sky was a dull gray, mirroring his mood. He shuffled along the sidewalk, lost in his thoughts, barely noticing his surroundings. Suddenly, a car pulled up beside him. It wasn't just any car. It was a sleek, black limousine, the kind you only see in movies. The tinted windows were rolled up, hiding the occupants inside. Ben stopped walking, surprised. He wondered who could be looking for him. The car idled smoothly beside him, the only sound disturbing the quiet evening. He hesitated, unsure of what to do. Was this some kind of mistake? He hadn't done anything wrong. He just wanted to get home to Sarah and Lucky. He hoped it wasn't more bad news. He really couldn't take any more. The back window slowly lowered, revealing a glimpse of the interior. Ben's curiosity piqued. He took a tentative step closer, his heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and intrigue. What was going on? The door of the limousine opened, and a woman stepped out. She was unlike anyone Ben had ever seen. She was dressed in a sleek, expensive-looking suit, and her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun. She exuded an air of sophistication and power. Two large men emerged from the car behind her. They were dressed in dark suits and sunglasses, their faces impassive. They stood on either side of the woman, like silent guardians. Ben realized they were bodyguards. The woman looked at Ben, her eyes assessing. "Mr. Ben Carter?" she asked, her voice smooth and confident. Ben nodded, still trying to process what was happening. "Yes, that's me. My name is Isabella," she said, extending a hand. Her handshake was firm and direct. "I've been wanting to meet you." Ben felt a shiver run down his spine. There was something about Isabella that made him uneasy, something mysterious and perhaps a little dangerous. He couldn't quite put his finger on it. He was definitely out of his depth. "Mr. Carter," Isabella continued, her eyes never leaving his, "I've heard about your recent change in employment status." She paused, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "And I believe I have an opportunity that might interest you." Ben raised an eyebrow, intrigued and wary. "An opportunity? What kind of opportunity?" "Let's just say it's a position that requires someone with courage and a strong moral compass," Isabella said, her words carefully chosen. "Someone who is not afraid to do what is right, even when it's difficult. She offered very few specifics. The job description was vague, something about special projects and problem solving. But the compensation she mentioned was astonishing, far more than Ben had ever earned at the factory. It sounded too good to be true. What exactly would I be doing? Ben asked, his suspicion growing. Isabella simply smiled enigmatically. All in good time, Mr. Carter. All in good time. Are you interested in hearing more? The offer hung in the air, a tempting but potentially dangerous proposition.
Ben hesitated.
The offer was incredibly tempting. The money alone could solve all his family's problems, pay the bills, and give Sarah a break from her grueling shifts at the diner. But something about Isabella and her entourage made him deeply uneasy. He didn't trust her. He looked at the two bodyguards, their faces like stone. They seemed capable of anything, and Isabella's vague explanation of the job only heightened his suspicion. What kind of special projects required armed guards and a limousine? He thought of Sarah working tirelessly to keep them afloat. He thought of Lucky, their loyal dog, who deserved better than the cheap food they had been buying lately. He desperately needed a job, but he couldn't shake the feeling that accepting Isabella's offer would be a deal with the devil. I don't know, Ben stammered, his mind racing. It sounds complicated. I need to think about it. He needed time to weigh the risks and benefits, to decide if the potential reward was worth the potential danger. He needed to trust his gut. A brief scene change indicated by a change in font or sound effect if this were a movie. For a fleeting moment, the scene shifts. We see Isabella as a young girl, living in a grand mansion. She's surrounded by luxury, but her face is etched with sadness. She witnesses hushed conversations between stern-looking men, glimpses of briefcases filled with money, and hurried departures in the middle of the night. We see her being tutored in multiple languages, trained in self-defense, and taught to always be aware of her surroundings. We see her making a difficult choice, a choice that will affect the lives of many. A choice made under pressure, a choice that haunts her still. The images flash by quickly, like snippets of a dream. The implication is clear. Isabella comes from a powerful and possibly dangerous family, a family with secrets and a legacy of questionable actions. She has lived a life of privilege, but also a life of fear and compromise. The choices she made then have shaped the woman she is today. The scene fades back to Ben and Isabella in the present. End of flashback. Ben looked into Isabella's eyes, searching for any sign of deceit. He saw only a steely determination. He thought of Sarah, her tired face etched with worry. He thought of the stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen table. He thought of Lucky, their faithful companion, who deserved better. He knew deep down that this was a dangerous path, a path that could lead to trouble. But he couldn't let his family suffer any longer. He had to do something. He had to take a chance. Taking a deep breath, Ben made his decision. "Okay, Isabella," he said, his voice firm despite his inner turmoil. "I accept your offer." Isabella's lips curved into a genuine smile, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Excellent, Mr. Carter. I knew you wouldn't disappoint me." She gestured towards the limousine. "We have much to discuss. Shall we?" Ben stepped into the car, leaving his old life behind and entering a world of uncertainty and potential danger. He hoped he wouldn't regret his decision. He prayed he was doing the right thing. Ben's life changed overnight. He moved out of his small house and into a luxurious apartment in the city, paid for by Isabella. He had access to expensive clothes, fine dining, and a car with a personal driver. Sarah was overjoyed at their newfound wealth and the relief it brought. His work for Isabella was unlike anything he had ever imagined. He attended meetings in high-rise offices, traveled to exotic locations, and interacted with powerful and influential people. He was surrounded by luxury, but also by a constant undercurrent of tension and secrecy. He learned that Isabella's special projects involved managing her family's vast business empire, an empire built on wealth and power. But he also sensed that there was more to it than met the eye. He saw glimpses of shady deals, hushed conversations in back rooms, and a network of people who seemed to operate outside the law. Ben was becoming increasingly aware that he had stepped into a world far more complex and dangerous than he could have ever anticipated. He started to wonder exactly what he had gotten himself into. As Ben gained Isabella's trust, he was given more responsibility and access to sensitive information. He started piecing together the truth about her family's business. It wasn't just a legitimate empire. It was also involved in illegal activities like money laundering, arms dealing, and extortion. He discovered that Isabella was trying to clean up her family's act, using her position to dismantle the illegal operations from within. But she was facing resistance from powerful members of her family who wanted to maintain the status quo. She needed Ben's help, not just as an employee, but as someone she could trust. Ben also learned more about Isabella's past, the difficult choices she had made, and the sacrifices she had endured to protect her family. He began to understand her motivations and the burden she carried. He realized that she was trapped in a dangerous world, just as he was now. The stakes were higher than he could have ever imagined. He was in too deep to simply walk away. He had to make a choice. Ben was torn. On one hand, he was living a life of luxury, providing for his family in ways he had never dreamed possible. Staying loyal to Isabella meant continuing to enjoy those benefits, ensuring Sarah's happiness and Lucky's well-being. He could turn a blind eye to the illegal activities, convincing himself that he was just helping Isabella clean things up from the inside. But on the other hand, his conscience wouldn't let him. He knew that what Isabella's family was doing was wrong, and he couldn't be complicit in their crimes. Exposing them, however, would put him and his family in grave danger. Isabella's family was powerful and ruthless. They wouldn't hesitate to silence anyone who threatened their empire. He wrestled with his decision, pacing his luxurious apartment late into the night. He confided in Sarah, who was shocked by what he had learned. She urged him to do what was right no matter the cost, but she also feared for their safety. The weight of the decision was crushing him. He knew that whatever he chose, there would be consequences. He just had to decide which consequences he could live with. While reviewing some old files, Ben stumbled upon a photograph. It was a picture of a young girl, the same little girl he had saved from the speeding car. But there was something else in the photo, something that made his blood run cold. Standing beside the little girl was a younger version of Isabella. He did some digging and discovered that the little girl was Isabella's niece, the daughter of her estranged brother, who had tried to expose the family's illegal activities years ago and had mysteriously disappeared. Isabella had been secretly providing for her niece, keeping her safe from the rest of the family, who saw her as a threat. The revelation added another layer of complexity to Ben's moral dilemma. Now, it wasn't just about loyalty and danger. It was about protecting an innocent child. He felt a renewed sense of responsibility, a connection to the little girl he had saved. He knew he couldn't stand by and let Isabella's family harm her. He had to do something, even if it meant risking everything. The decision became clearer. He would help Isabella protect her niece. Ben confronted Isabella with his discovery. Initially, she was furious, accusing him of betraying her trust. But he explained that he only wanted to help protect her niece. He told her about the connection he felt to the little girl, the responsibility he felt to keep her safe. Isabella, seeing the sincerity in Ben's eyes, relented. She admitted that she was struggling to protect her niece on her own, that her family was closing in. She revealed that they were planning to use the little girl as leverage against her, forcing her to stop dismantling their illegal operations. Together, Ben and Isabella began to formulate a plan to protect the little girl and expose Isabella's family. They gathered evidence of their crimes, knowing that they were walking a dangerous tightrope. Ben's loyalty shifted from just Isabella to include the child, making him more determined than ever. Their actions did not go unnoticed. Isabella's family grew suspicious, and the danger escalated. Ben and Isabella found themselves at odds with powerful and ruthless individuals, putting their lives on the line. The rising action was set. They were going to face some serious consequences. The confrontation came sooner than they expected. Isabella's uncle, the most ruthless member of the family, discovered their plan. He arranged a meeting, ostensibly to discuss business, but in reality, it was a trap. Ben and Isabella arrived at a remote warehouse, sensing the danger. Isabella's uncle, surrounded by his own bodyguards, accused them of betrayal. He revealed secrets about Isabella's past that she had kept hidden from Ben, testing their loyalty to each other. He revealed that Isabella had been planning to run away with the money. The tension in the warehouse was thick enough to cut with a knife. Accusations flew back and forth, loyalties were questioned, and old wounds were reopened. Ben found himself caught in the middle, unsure of who to trust. He looked at Isabella, searching her eyes for the truth. Was she really planning to betray him? Or was her uncle just trying to sow discord? It was difficult to know which side to pick. He had trusted Isabella, but maybe he was wrong. Maybe he had gotten in too deep. Now all he wanted to do was to protect the little girl. He had a feeling that this confrontation could be their last. In that moment, Ben realized that it didn't matter whether Isabella was planning to run away with the money or not. What mattered was that her uncle and the rest of her family were dangerous, and they were willing to harm an innocent child to get what they wanted. He made his choice. He stepped forward, placing himself between Isabella and her uncle. Whatever Isabella has done, whatever her plans are, it doesn't matter, he said, his voice clear and strong. I won't let you hurt her, and I certainly won't let you hurt that little girl. Isabella looked at Ben, surprised by his unwavering loyalty. Her uncle scoffed. You're a fool, Ben, he said. You're throwing your life away for someone who doesn't care about you. Ben didn't respond. He knew he was taking a risk, but he couldn't stand by and do nothing. He had to protect Isabella and her niece, even if it meant sacrificing everything. His decision was made, and there was no turning back. His future and the fate of the child depended on it. He was ready to face whatever came next. Isabella's uncle signaled to his bodyguards, and they moved to surround Ben and Isabella. A fight was inevitable. Ben, despite his ordinary background, was surprisingly resourceful. He used his knowledge of the warehouse to his advantage, leading Isabella and him through a maze of corridors and storage containers. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but Ben refused to give up. He used his quick thinking to create diversions, setting off alarms and causing chaos. Isabella, too, proved to be a formidable opponent, using her training in self-defense to fend off the attackers. They managed to escape the warehouse, but they knew they were far from safe. Isabella's uncle would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. They had to protect the little girl, who was now their top priority. A chase ensued, with Ben and Isabella racing against time to reach the little girl before Isabella's uncle did. They were in a dangerous situation. Their lives, and the life of an innocent child, hung in the balance. Ben had to use all of his courage and wit to survive. Ben and Isabella managed to reach the little girl, rescuing her from her would-be captors. They turned over the evidence they had gathered to the authorities, exposing Isabella's family's illegal activities to the world. Isabella's uncle and the other members of her family were arrested, their reign of terror finally over. Isabella, despite her efforts to clean up her family's act, also had to face the consequences of her actions. She was charged with being an accessory to some of her family's crimes, but she received a lighter sentence due to her cooperation with the authorities. She used her remaining wealth to ensure her niece's safety and well-being, providing her with a secure future. She knew she had to pay for her past mistakes, but she was determined to make amends. She wanted to ensure that her niece had a better life, a life free from the shadow of her family's criminal empire. She accepted her fate, knowing that she had done the right thing in the end. The situation was finally resolved. Ben, after his involvement with Isabella's family, could never go back to his old life. He had seen too much, experienced too much, but he didn't regret his choices. He had done what was right, and that was all that mattered. He used the money he had earned working for Isabella to start his own business, a small security firm that focused on protecting vulnerable people. He hired former law enforcement officers and people with similar skills, creating a team of dedicated professionals who shared his values. He became a pillar of the community, known for his bravery and integrity. He was finally recognized as the hero he had always been. He was respected for his honesty. He and Sarah moved back to their small house in town, where they lived a simple but happy life with Lucky. They were grateful for what they had, and they never forgot the lessons they had learned. Ben had found a new path in life, one that aligned with his values and provided a stable future for his family. He was a true hero not because of the wealth he had acquired, but because of the choices he had made. He had saved a child, stood up to injustice, and found his purpose. He was happy,